A Chinese Australian in Hong Kong, friend of a friend, has been getting emails forwarded to them with video absolutely bagging Prime Minister Scott Morrison. I checked in a couple of the videos that have been sent, like this one.
Hello， 大家好，又係我高 B 哥啊。
Now, it's made by a pro-Beijing influencer in Hong Kong, calling himself Brother Gao B, who says the Australian election double standard again. He's talking about the secret security deal China signed last week with the Solomon Islands. Morrison said that the military base in the Solomon Islands is a red line. So, Ukraine's entry into NATO is Russia's bottom line. Well, that's the communist China response too, you know, whatever Russia's doing in Ukraine, the West is worse, guilty of double standards. Another video, again attacks Morrison for being against this deal that could create actually a Chinese military base on the Solomons, just 1,600 kilometres from Australia. And this time he says, Morrison tumbled due to the Solomon Islands incident. Will the Australian election in May be reversed? It means the government being thrown out. Well, each of these videos so far had between 50 and 65,000 views and growing. And in an electorate like Chisholm in Victoria, that could make a huge difference because 20% of the people there are ethnic Chinese. Many speak Cantonese. And that electorate, Liberal held, is right on the knife edge, right on it. Now, the person getting these videos sent to them, and other videos too, they weren't wondering, is this part of a Chinese social media campaign against the Morrison government? And I asked the guy who made the video if he was paid to do what he's done. China employs, in fact, a lot of people, some say hundreds of thousands of people. Read it up in The Great Firewall of China, great book, Great Firewall of China, who do post propaganda on social media. And this man himself says he is open to deals from industry. It's on his website. Well, just before coming on air, I saw us put up a video response to his video channel, and a site that's had an astonishing 2.5 million views in just 2 years. But all I've translated yet, pardon, my Cantonese isn't great despite having lived in Hong Kong for 1.5 years, all that I've translated yet is that he says no one's paid him. And that may well be right, I don't know. But this does show that the huge Chinese vote in Australia, there's about 1.2 million Australian Chinese here. It is influenced by social media debates, part of it, that are invisible to many other Australians. Join me on Trending Now is Daisy Cousens, a Sky News contributor and YouTube star with her own video channel influencing elections. Daisy Cousens, thank you so much for your time. What can you tell us about this site?
Well, this influencer, Andrew, has actually proved to be quite elusive. I sort of had a look at him this afternoon. He doesn't actually pop up in a Google search, which is quite interesting. And he also doesn't really seem to be on any other forms of Western media. I can't find him on Twitter or Instagram, which is sort of unusual because YouTubers tend to be cross-platform. But he's very, very much focused on YouTube. And you know, looking at his About section and stuff, he seems to be what you'd call a citizen journalist. And certainly some of the comments on these anti-Morrison videos were congratulating him and thanking him for his apparent impartiality and nuance. So he seems to be quite popular. He has a not insignificant number of subscribers either. He's got about 216,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is a few thousand more subscribers than I have. And as you said, the videos are racking up significant views, 50 or 60,000. That is quite a chunk. And although it's hard to tell much about him, what we can tell is that this election stuff, the Australian election, seems to be doing well for his site. There's a website called Social Blade, which stores YouTuber data, so views, subscriber growth, all of that sort of thing. And what I checked out his Social Blade profile, and it seems that for the last sort of year or so, his views and subscribers have kind of plateaued along. But just in the last couple of months, February to March, there's been this sudden uptick in subscribers and views, which of course coincides very much with the ramping up of election rhetoric in Australia. So whether he's getting paid or not, I mean, and obviously he says he's not, he's doing well out of this kind of stuff. So if the coalition knows about it, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm sure that they'd be quite worried because this is an influencer with a significant enough reach and enough people interested in this content and obviously who enjoy this content, hence the praise. The Chinese vote is very large. And as you say, it could tip the scales of power. I find it all so fascinating.
Well, it's not him alone. It's also a reminder, of course, Daisy, that election campaigns now, a lot of the election campaigns are fought out of sight of most Australians. I mean, you've got the social media messages, including to English speakers, of course, very tightly targeted. Also, ethnic media, very tightly targeted. And sometimes we've got no idea of what messages are really being sent by whom.
Oh, it is such a brave new world out there, Andrew, nowadays when it comes to election campaigning. I mean, Hillary Clinton actually said, I think it was Hillary Clinton a little while, made a comment and said, years ago, the media environment was much easier to control. And she was obviously derided for those comments. But look, I know exactly what she means. Back in the old days, before social media, before, international social media as well, politicians, you'd call a press conference or you'd do an interview. It would go out to the journalists. You probably knew most of the journalists. You know exactly what kind of narrative was coming out, and it was much easier propaganda to control. Nowadays, on top of the media, you've got Twitter, all of social media. You've got independent journalists who, within your own country, and then you have a whole international social media influence in languages other than English, which are almost impossible for politicians in one country to control. And look, one could argue, Andrew, that that's actually really good for democracy, having politicians have infinitely less control over the narrative than they used to. So from your average citizen point of view, look, hey, maybe it's a good thing. But from a politician's perspective, what an absolute nightmare for them. It's one of the reasons I'm so interested to see the outcome of this election, because politicians are having to campaign or deal with other campaign influences in a way that they never had before. I find it so, so interesting.
Look, I take your point very much that in one sense it's good for democracy. On the other hand, the social media is allowing, we've seen Russia try to influence American debate. They had paid people, including in their army or their social security systems, to put out memes and blog posts and tweets with no one knowing where they're coming from, bang, to try and stir up debate. And China is doing the same. Whether this is part of it, I have no idea. But that's the whole point. We don't know. We don't know.